There we go. That's it. Recording. Here we go. So this is the Unvarnished podcast Hangout version. And I'm Ryan Brown. I'm with, I never know which way to point, Katie Whipple and her husband, Brendan Johnston. Thanks for joining me. You guys are the first New Yorkers who could respond to me.
Ah.
So I feel,
and it still took us 2 weeks.
I got through to the real New Yorkers. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. You guys are legit. So, Brendan, I have a question for you before we start because
Sure.
I got some wine here that because I thought you were a wine guy. So, what's the rule here? I heard something about if you're going to drink beer and like something harder, bourbon or whatever, you want to drink the beer first so you don't get the hangover. Is that what's the rule? You're more experienced, right? So if I'm going to have a martini with you after this, am I getting the right order or am I screwing myself?
So that's a good question. I don't know. There's the old limerick: liquor before beer, have no fear. Beer before liquor, never been sicker. But that's like I think that's like a college when you're gonna have like 20 drinks. It's a guideline so that you don't end up in the hospital. But I think the like more mature approach would be you go through an evening, maybe it goes beer, white wine, red wine, or maybe a scotch before dinner or after dinner type thing. But like, if you're gonna have 4 drinks, we'll all survive.
I knew I was asking the right guy.
Yeah, so I'm a veteran alcoholic, come from a long lineage of Irish Catholics and WASPs who all did a stellar job of figuring out how to put away as much alcohol as possible.
Okay. I've got 2 years behind me.
All right,
So
well, text me. I'm happy
not...
to field any questions you might have going forward.
Okay, good.
Brendan, will you tell quickly the story of shotgunning a beer every 5-minute model break during a night class one time at GCA?
I think you are already halfway through the story, so you should...
I didn't participate, though. It's your story. While we're on the topic of alcohol.
Oh, that's great. That would make for a fun drawing session.
Yeah. I actually still have the portrait sketch I did, and it wasn't the worst thing I've ever made, so it wasn't too bad.
Oh, boy. So Katie, you're pregnant. It's crazy.
Yes.
Crazy. You've already
I'm
made
drinking a mocktail.
So I'm safe announcing that, right?
Yes, yeah. It's public knowledge.
Oh my God.
I mean, Libby told everyone right away anyway, so.
So you gosh, I think I remember meeting you when you were 15, around there. Is that about right? Because you.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first time we met.
It might have been at a conference, or I can't remember how old you were when you came to the studio here. I thought you were maybe 16 or 17.
I was probably I was definitely still in high school, yeah. So.
And now you're just a thriving adult, married, and having first kid in the way. That is so exciting. So exciting. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank
gosh,
you.
Your life is going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. Especially the mother. I mean, geez. Katie Lydiard just had a baby. She was never planning on having a baby, and then she just did. And man, that changes so many things, right?
Yeah. Well, my grandpa always said the first baby can come at any time, but after that, it takes 9 months.
Oh man. So I'm getting shoulder surgery here in like 3 weeks. I have a torn labrum, and I'll be out for I think 5 months. I won't be able to do much. And man, I just can't even imagine how I'm gonna deal with that. Are you mentally preparing for the this new thing that's gonna keep you away from the easel? This time suck?
I think the fact that I've like barely been painting already is a good indication that I'm a little distracted.
So it's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. It'll fit right into
Yeah.
everything you're doing.
I'm really excited. I've always wanted to have kids, so and you know, this baby was planned, so it wasn't like, you know, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I didn't want this like, yeah, I wanted to be just an artist. Like, that's not, you know, no judgment to anybody who wants that. That's amazing and totally legit. But no, I really it's something I've always wanted. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the break from painting and the change, and we'll see. Maybe if you talk to me in January after the baby's born, I'll be like, what was I thinking?
2 weeks in daycare. Just
Yeah.
get him out of here.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
no, it
I'm
won't
like,
be like,
Mom, when are you moving to New York?
yeah, no way. It's the best thing. It's amazing. I remember when we had our first kid. I mean, we were pretty young. You guys are pretty young, but we were younger than you. And it was such an immediate change from, you know, going through the pregnancy and the excitement and buying all the little baby clothes and setting up the crib and the anticipation of it all. And then the moment that baby's there and you hold it, it's like an instant memory fog. You have no concept of what life was before you had this thing. It's just life changing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And
We're
now,
looking forward to it.
now my kids are old enough where I'm like, ugh, you guys gotta go. You're,
Yeah.
you're talking back all the time. You eat so much food. It's, geez.
Yeah.
You guys are pretty outnumbered too. I just
Yeah.
keep thinking about that. Like, oh man, when you have over two, like you're outnumbered,
Yep.
but you have five, so you're like
5.
really outnumbered.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So how do you feel, Brennan? You're ready? You ready to be a papa?
No. But you know, this still feels very far away for me. I keep telling Katie that I'm really going to feel like a dad, you know, not until the child is, our boy is old enough to wield, you know, a 4 to 5 pound chisel hammer. That's kind of when I'll acknowledge that he's in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. My poor son, I have 1 boy and 4 girls. And my poor son, he wants to go fishing. He wants to like hunt. And I'm like, let's go antiquing.
You've been broken in.
I know. Let's go to the art museum. And it's just, I like to fish. Like I like that tug, but then when it gets out of the water and you have to touch it, I'll eat it, but I don't want to mess it beyond that.
Katie and I are both from families of 3 boys and 1 girl.
Yeah.
And we're both the second child in the spectrum of 4 children, which is kind of interesting because
So am I.
early on in our relationship, we were able to identify with so many things, and she completely understood. She also knew how to like put me in my place very quickly.
Yeah. I have 3 boys, 1 girl, and I'm the third. Sorry, I'm the third.
Ah,
You're the
but
third.
still,
Yeah.
it's a good combo.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing sports, and I went hunting with my dad a couple of times. We went fishing, but I just not into it anymore. My poor boy wants to do it all the time, and sorry, man, go hang out with my brother. He'll take you. Both my brothers are big gun fanatics, and like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine balancing a painting career and 5 children. I mean, that's an enormous amount to take. And a school for that matter.
And all your other children.
Yeah. I have a good wife. We're lucky enough that she can stay home and take care of them, and she's great at it. So, Yeah, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, your wife is amazing. She's great.
yeah. So I want to hear about what you guys are doing. Katie, you were going to have a one-man show, one-woman show at Arcadia. You want to talk about that?
Not really.
How
Yeah.
much of a can of worms do we want to open?
Uh,
But you must have a lot of work for that. Do you have any plans for that? Do you have maybe other outlets you want to show it in, or
yeah, I mean, I'm working with a couple of other galleries, and I just decided to kind of take things easy. Some of my painting plans got derailed because of COVID, because the
Yeah.
flower markets all shut down.
yeah?
So I wasn't able to get flowers to finish some of the larger pieces that I was working on this spring. So I was like, oh, I'll just finish them next year when the flowers are in bloom again. So that's fine. But yeah, I decided to take a little time away. I've been taking a break from painting, and yeah, and I'm just kind of taking it easy, and I have a couple galleries I work with that are starting to, couple new galleries I'm starting to work with, and yeah, I'm in a nice place of limbo right now, which I'm really enjoying.
What does that mean for you? Take a break from painting, because I don't have any concept of that. I don't I don't ever want to do it. If I go a couple of days, I start to get a little bit stir crazy. I start to get kind of upset with myself. What's a day for you? When you take a break from painting, I mean, is it just Brendan and Theo? How annoying does she get, Brendan? This is what I really want to know.
I'm always at like
Kick her out of the
100%
studio?
annoying. No, I haven't been in the studio. So Brendan's had some night. We share a studio, so he's had a lot of alone time. I mean, like last week I took a Maya Graffiti's drawing workshop, which was amazing. Online workshop, obviously. We're not doing anything in person these days. But yeah, I've been like reading and repeatedly watching the Andy Goldsworthy documentary. And just kind of doing little studies and thinking about stuff. But I really I haven't, like when I say I haven't been painting, I haven't been painting. I've been out of the studio, and it's been nice for.
But also, sorry to interject, Katie, you've been painting consistently for the past like 15 years nonstop.
Yeah.
So the like slight side note, you've been insanely busy forever.
Yeah. And
yeah, this is like the first break from painting I've ever taken since I was
14.
Probably, yeah.
Wow.
So it's been kind of nice to gain some perspective. And obviously I feel like I'm doing something, as I'm like, well, I'm making a baby, so I'm being productive. So I guess it's a nice
thing, I would imagine, because I know like so this will sound silly, but it's just what came to mind. Like I play basketball usually like twice a week, and that shut down in March, and so I've gone a little stir crazy, but I keep watching. I mean, I've watched the Michael Jordan, that Bulls documentary.
You watched it too.
Oh my gosh,
it's so good.
Times, and I grew up a massive Michael Jordan fan. I mean, I had all the Bulls gear and the posters and everything, and I still every day I watch Jordan stuff on YouTube every day. So I'm watching tons of YouTube basketball videos, and then I just recently went back to play basketball, and my game was different a little bit, and it was like my mind had a chance to recharge and adjust and expand a little bit, and I felt like I came back slightly different. Right, there's a different.
Like now when you dunk, you do it with your tongue out. That's the main change in your game. It happens with your tongue out.
And you do like a lot of this kind of like
it's over. Bam.
My
Nailed it.
43-year-old knees are not dunking anything but donuts. Yeah, I mean, it's a silly thing because I don't, I play pickup basketball. It's not like a big deal. I'm not Travis Schlott or anything, but, um, I feel like maybe that could be something that happens in painting too. When you kind of take a break, your mind refreshes, you expand, you read things, you watch like the Amaya thing. We're always constantly looking at great art. It'll be interesting to see how you come back and how that changes. I mean, maybe your touch a little bit, but also maybe your focus and your interest, your sense of composition, whatever. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I thought it would be really, um, kind of as you're saying, like I never could have imagined wanting to take a break from painting.
Yeah.
And and then I think it just with everything that's been happening in the world the last few months, it just kind of naturally happened that way for me, where I was like, I just need to take some time and reevaluate things. And then I also got pregnant, so all of it's kind of happening at once.
Yeah.
And it feels really good. Like before I would really beat myself up if I took time off, like even if I really needed a weekend or something, I'd be like, I can't believe I'm not painting. I have flowers in the fridge. They're gonna die. Like, all of these things. So it does feel, this is a new feeling for me, like this kind of lull in productivity, but it's nice. And I realize it's a luxury. Like not everybody has the opportunity to take a couple months off of their job. But it's been nice for me. So.
And I imagine like as a painter, you might take time off of the actual physical act of painting, but you're always mentally looking at things, right? They're constantly. Yeah. I mean, we're just in a mode where we're constantly just shoving things visually in our head, and I mean, one of the best things about our job is just recognizing and internalizing beauty. And I don't think you turn that off, even though you may not be going through the physical act of recording it on canvas. It's not like you've taken a break from being a painter. You're just kind of, you're not creating as much at the moment, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and Brendan, you've been sculpting, which is the hardest, like subtractive sculpture has to be the hardest form of art out there, right? I mean, it's just insane. We just finished a portrait sculpture workshop. Sculptor Michael Hall here in Utah taught, and
he's great. He's super talented.
Like, yeah, it was so great. I was really surprised. The very first day, or the first hour actually, I was sculpting this portrait. I'm looking at it like a painter, looking for like light and shadow shapes, and looking at it from one perspective or one vantage point, and thinking, how am I going to adjust my thinking? But you slide into it pretty quickly. You start moving around the model. You start realizing, you start thinking about it more structurally, more dimensionally, and then it's such a fluid transition as a draftsman or painter to think about it that way. But to go from the definition of form while only using shape or your contour or whatever, to now trying to make it look good from every single angle is it can be somewhat of a fluid transition for a painter, but it's also just so different, but useful as well. And I found like massively useful when I'm thinking about painting. So what got you into that? You were in Rome, and didn't you study subtractive sculpture in Italy? Was it in Italy?
So there's a couple different strings of history going on, I guess. So the reason I got into sculpture originally was back at GCA, which is a phenomenal school, and you've been following a lot of the careers of everyone. But I remember when Katie and I were students there, we would watch the students a year ahead of us go into the sculpture room for a couple months, and then when they came back out, their draftsmanship took this like really noticeable leap. They went from drawing in a certain way, and then they go into the sculpture room and they come back, and it had this physicality and this more of a cylindrical quality, and it was really noticeable. So I was like, all right, I'm spending as much time in the sculpture room as I can. And so that's how I originally got into sculpting. And we had a wonderful teacher, Juwang Che, who's also a teacher at the New York Academy. So that's how I originally got into it. And then years later, after I graduated, Katie and I was sort of on Katie's coattails. She won the Alma Shapiro Award, which brought two of us to the American Academy in Rome, which is another phenomenal institution. Yeah. And of course, when you're in Italy, there's marble and travertine and stone sculptures everywhere. Yeah. And so I fell in love with marble sculptures ages ago. And I kept talking about it and wanting to say, what would it be like to do stone carving? And finally, Katie and Katie's mom eventually were like, go do it, stop talking. So I just through searching around on the internet, if you take the painting, the world of, the painting world is this big, the world of realist painters or traditional representational painters is this big, the world of stone carvers is something like, it's really minuscule. So I found a wonderful guy, Steve Shaheen, who's a stone carver who went to the New York Academy of Art, and I studied with him, and all roads lead back to Italy. So I ended up going back to Italy to take a class with him, because that's where you buy stone, that's where you buy tools. You can find a lot of the stuff here in America, but it's less expensive over there. And so that's kind of, so I started from the beginning again a couple years ago with stone carving. You go, it's kind of interesting to like build your way up the pyramid in a way of technical ability. And I kind of found it refreshing to go back to stone carving as just a complete novice and know nothing. And so, yeah, I've been doing it for the past couple of years, and I've loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of outlet do you have for that? Because I know that a lot of the sculptors I talk to, they're either wildly successful or it's just such an expensive pursuit, and it's much harder to sell. And so what kind of outlet have you found for it? Is there gallery interest in that, or are they kind of balking at the idea of because I would imagine that a lot of galleries kind of know you as a painter. You have a little bit more larger body of work as a painter. What's the response when you're trying to find an outlet to show and sell it?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I haven't really made much of an effort, so I don't know too much what so I'll put it this way. The reaction to working in stone has been overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. And I think that's quite honestly just in part because there's very few people doing it. Yeah. And being one of the few people in your field goes a long way, because so much of the art world is interested in novelty. They're not necessarily interested in quality is a separate thing, but like novelty is really, really a big deal. Yeah. So just because not many people are doing it, I've gotten quite a bit of interest. I haven't knocked on any doors yet, because I'm waiting to build up a body of stone carvings and then present it to a gallery and see how it goes. So I haven't made the effort yet, mainly because they're very time consuming. I've only been doing it for about a year or so. Yeah. So I'm not even thinking that far ahead yet. I'm focusing on making them, and then I'm going to see how they sell. But they are so hard to sell. So I don't know what the finances look like yet, because
it's not like additive sculpture where you create a mold and you've got 24 to 50 originals. This is like a painting where it's one and done, and it took a long ass time, and I can imagine trying to figure out the finances of all that. How do I make this worthwhile? This is going to be a pretty expensive piece if you go to a gallery to pick it up.
Yeah.
It would have to be to justify the time, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. But the thing that's encouraging me is I've had collectors express interest in buying them already. So that's encouraging. And I think the one of a kind aspect is, I think it's actually a big draw, because for bronzes, and this isn't to poo-poo bronzes, like I love them. There's incredible sculptors producing bronzes, but if there's a set of, there's standardized sets, I forget what they are for bronzes. Is it 8? There's something like that. But if you know that there's 8 of them floating around in the world, you know, it makes them seem a little less desirable, maybe. Whereas I'm trying to produce absolutely one of a kind, couldn't even be replicated, because I'm working with sort of interesting patterns in the stonework. So even if I were to make a second one, it would look completely different from the first anyway. So, but we'll see. I don't know the business end of it yet, because I haven't really, I'm like scratching the surface a little. So we'll see. It might be a bust and it not go well, but I've enjoyed doing it, and so I'll keep doing it as long as I can.
It's
make
beautiful. I remember thinking, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound trite, but I remember watching the little video you put, I think, on Instagram, where you put, I don't know if it's a varnish or if it was just water or something you put on the bust, but it was at I think I watched it at a similar time as this Black Lives Matter thing. I mean, I guess that's still going on, but it was right around the George Floyd thing, which I think, you know, if you're human, is heartbreaking and almost unwatchable, disgustingly unwatchable. But when you put that on and it came down, it rolled down the forehead, and then it rolled down through the eye and came down, I thought, I know that's not what you meant to do. I know it was probably accidental, but there was a power to the sculpture in itself. But when you put that on, and I watched it, and I had all these things running through my mind with the protests and that horrific video, and I was just like, damn, if you were a performance artist or something, and or if you had a movie or something, and that was just a portion of it, there was something so powerful about that. Have you seen the movie Glory?
Is that the
Denzel Washington,
Civil War?
Yeah, Civil War,
Yeah,
54,
yeah.
the first Black Regiment.
Sure.
There's one scene
Robert
where
Downey Jr.
No, it's Matthew Broderick.
Oh.
Matthew Broderick is
Okay, my bad.
the head of the first Black Regiment in the Civil War.
Right.
There's a scene with Denzel Washington where he runs away from camp to find some shoes, and he gets caught as a deserter. They bring him back, and Matthew Broderick, to show, you know, strength as a leader, has him whipped, and the strength, he throws off this shirt and, you know, grabs the side of the wagon or whatever, and they start whipping him, and every time he's whipped, he has these flinches, and then just the music builds, and there's just one tear that drops. It's one of the most powerful cinematic moments I've ever seen, and it reminded me of that. If there was music in the background of that, and it was just like, and I know it was probably unintentional, but that whole moment, you know, culminated for me. It was just like, damn, that's powerful. Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with anything. That's just what I thought when I saw you post that video. Was that varnish? How do you treat the stone when you're done carving it?
Yeah. So anyway, just to back up to some of the stuff you were talking about a little bit is, well, I'll do the technical first. So no, that was just water. So when you carve stone, there's tiny little dust particles get pushed back into the stone, so it looks very sort of chalky or white.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you use a finer and finer finish. Essentially, it's a sandpaper. It's like a special type of sandpaper at the end that
Yeah.
you use to finish it. So it gets closer and closer to the sort of actual look when you, like, let's say you look at a countertop. You've got that beautiful glossy finish of like
Right.
a marble or quartz or something. And then finally, at the last stage, you actually use an acid, and it burns all those tiny little marble particles that have been pushed back into the surface. And then you see the final thing. Now you can use varnishes, you can use wax, you can use other things to finish it. But I bring it to such a high finish, just naturally, that all you use is this acid, and it burns all of the loose particles off. So that's sort of the technical end. And then just, you know, Katie and I have been we've been talking quite a bit about like recent Black Lives Matter issues and sort of what's socially been going on in our country. And, you know, over the years, I've been working with a lot of African American and Black models living in New York. And that was partially just because I thought there's so many phenomenal, wonderful models in New York that are people of color. And so I've been working with them quite a bit. And I had made that video actually before the George Floyd issue occurred or instance occurred. And so Katie encouraged me to repost it in solidarity. And so it was a little bit of a coincidence. The original video was just out of sort of a very human sort of powerful moment of just watching the true sort of underneath color of the stone come out. And it was just a powerful video that seemed to work with the current moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I was interested in it. I opened it just because I thought the sculpture was amazing. But then just, it was just such a simple moment, but it was pretty impactful for me when I saw it for all those reasons.
Thanks.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys about, I'm interested in, is the GCA is, you know, one of the best schools in the world, really. I mean,
only after Master Academy. I think we come in second.
Oh boy, I would love to build this up to a competitive place where people had to think about where they wanted to go.
Don't worry, I'll start the rumors. The Masters Academy is killing it.
We're killing it, yeah. I have wanted to, I do try to bring in people from the Grand Central Atelier every year for workshops and try to expand beyond myself and offer opportunities beyond me. I'm very nervous about creating too dogmatic an environment here. And I love, obviously, I mean, I love what the Grand Central is doing. I was really thinking initially about going there. I mean, when it was Water Street, I talked to Jacob after I graduated the Florence Academy about coming, but I was just so excited to start composing my own ideas. I just didn't want to do it anymore. Also, New York is
It's a tough place to be.
prohibitively expensive for me. With at the time I had 3 kids and 1 on the way, and I just thought, if I were to move to New York, I couldn't do it right. The only way I can think of really living in New York is either being young and single and willing to live with a bunch of roommates, or being really wealthy and really doing New York.
Living on Fifth Avenue in a brownstone with
yeah, neither's an option for me. But
honey, just stay in Utah. I'm gonna go to New York for a little while. I'll be back.
yeah,
Gonna have a few roommates.
I'll have a few roommates. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah. So, but one thing I keep thinking about, because I think about it in terms of refining my own curriculum. It's not my curriculum. It's just, you know, stuff I've put together. But the method is so kind of absolute there, and I think, you know, a lot of that comes from Jacob, probably. Dan Thompson had, I think, a lot of influence. Ted Seth Jacobs. You know, it kind of put itself together as well from a lot of different sources. Scott Waddell had a huge influence. But I see a lot of people, because it's such an absolute method, I think that it speeds up the progress of students early on, because you kind of have this ABC way of going through a drawing. You kind of know what you're aiming at in terms of what is this supposed to look like? What does defining form really look like? What is a successful definition of volume and space, the definition of anatomy look like? You've got so many great examples of teachers that are doing it. So as a young student, you can look at that and you have a really clear aim on where you're going. But when people leave, I see that there's a connection to the method that seems like it might be hard to shed, seems like it might be hard to break out of for a more personal touch. How have you guys dealt with that? Is that a fair assessment? Is it, because my student, Brian Johnston, who I think you know, is there now. And so we kind of talk about that. He's coming from here. He has some other experience as well. And so for him, he can kind of take that method, but he's experienced something else. So he can kind of take and leave whatever works for him, and then kind of make decisions outside of that. But for someone coming with maybe a clean slate and getting that method, it being super effective, adopting the idea of what makes a successful drawing, how have you both dealt with post-academic training, kind of finding your own way of problem solving?
Well, Katie, you should go first on this, because I feel as though you, in a way, have more successfully carved your own path.
Just paint flowers.
Just paint.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I do think yours being subject matter heavy, where you're sticking to a very distinct subject matter, has a lot to do with a more a faster way of branding yourself.
Well, yeah, it definitely wasn't the intention, but it has had that effect. It definitely helped me break from some of the just let me back up a minute with my thoughts. I think every art student has some holdups from wherever they trained, like when they're trying to make their own work after they're not a student anymore. And there's this long transition period where you're like kind of still a student and trying to make, like, after you're out of school, you're still like, after Brendan and I graduated, we went and lived in Italy for a year, and we spent a year doing master copies. And so there's this like slow transition out of learning all of this technique in a more, and as you're saying, GCA is it's a little bit less than when Brendan and I were in school. Yeah. It was like very much like you draw for a year and then you do grisaille for a year and then you can do color, and it was slower and more specific. And now there's a little bit more variety in the technique and the teaching. But
Olympics had a huge impact on the sort of variation in the technique.
Yeah, and she's amazing. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling, but no. Yeah, I think that, it's funny because during COVID, a lot of my girlfriends from GCA are scattered all around, the world now. And so we've been having Zoom calls with our group of girlfriends that all studied at GCA together. I call us lady painters. And this has been one of the biggest topics during our Zoom calls, is just like how to get over your hang-ups, like technically or whatever it is, that you just keep from school that are not, like, there's no reason you need to have them, there's a reason you learned them, but there's not a reason you need to keep everything that you were taught, as you were just saying. So yeah, for me, a lot of it, Brendan's been really helpful, because Brendan studied art history in college before coming to GCA to study painting. So he introduced me to a lot of artists that I didn't know about, and that kind of helped broaden my horizons and made me think about things differently. And you know, there's all these funny things. Like I remember it was probably like 3 years after I graduated GCA, I was like, oh, I don't have to tone a canvas with burnt umber every time. I can like tone a canvas purple if I want. Like, it seems so stupid, but that was like a huge breakthrough of like, oh, you don't have to do these like things that you're like, every painting starts this way, so I'm just gonna start my painting with burnt umber.
As
So
your idea of what makes a successful work, because I feel like that's one of the issues is you almost adopt the idea that what makes a successful work has to have, it has to have a high degree of rendering. It has to have a you know, highly defined form. It has to have blah blah blah. And so as your, you know, whatever your subject matter might be, you're still kind of aiming it to have all of those particular qualities. That obviously has an aesthetic, I guess it feels somewhat aesthetically confining. It's because, and again, that goes back to being a student and just kind of adopting these things, and then once you leave and maturing on your own and starting to think on your own, starting to get exposed to a lot of different master works and various ways of solving similar problems, and aesthetically saying, ooh, I really like that. That's not how I would necessarily do it, but I love that. I'm going to try that. Kind of beginning to mimic other things, emulate other things. Has your sense of what creates a great work of art shifted as you've matured? I mean, I'm sure it has. That's a silly question, but maybe how has it shifted? You've done, I mean, with your subject matter, you've done some almost Japanese-like compositions and ways of presenting this subject matter that are so unique.
Oh, thank you.
Would you say that's kind of one way you've shifted?
Yeah, I love Japanese painting, as well as Japanese flower arranging, which is called ikebana. And yeah, with my flower painting specifically, I take a lot of inspiration just from actual floral design, which is really fun to kind of learn more about. And I have a lot of friends that are florists now, and so it's getting into the flower world, and it's a whole nother very legitimate, does not get enough credit for being a fine art. It is an absolute fine art. It's amazing what these artists do. But yeah, so I take a lot of influence from that, and also just I feel like it's changing all the time. Like I mentioned it earlier, but Brendan introduced me to Andy Goldsworthy, who is a sculptor who works with only natural materials, like actual nature. So a lot of his sculptures will just, you know, he'll like make an icicle sculpture, so it just melts. But I've been obsessed with him the last few months, and I can't stop reading his writing and watching his documentaries and all these things. And so I think that when I was at GCA, I never would have even thought about somebody like Andy Goldsworthy, because I was just like, oh, it just has to be figurative. And yeah, so Brendan is really, I I mean, I should let you talk, Brendan, but Brendan has a vast knowledge of art, and he's taught me a lot and has introduced me to a lot, and he knows me really well. So he'll be like looking at me struggling in the studio, and then he'll be like, oh, well, you should look at this artist. And then I'll like start putting pieces together that I felt like I was missing. So it is nice to be married to an artist. It is helpful.
I don't know if I could do it. I think I'm too competitive. I don't know if I could live in a home where that level of criticism was constant. Because, man, if I was married to somebody that was better than me, it would kill me. And if they weren't as good at me as me, it would kill me too. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Well, sorry, I was gonna say my mom will often just like remark on how good Brendan is at painting and sculpting, and then I'll be like, well, what did you think I was gonna marry somebody who wasn't? Like,
yeah. Right.
like she'll see one of Brendan's new pieces and she'll just be like, Katie, oh my God, like, especially with his marble sculptures, my mom like completely thinks Brendan's a genius.
Okay.
I agree.
Easy.
And
we're all on that side.
All right, cool it down over there.
this is the part of the program where we really embarrass Brendan. But
I'll
yeah,
be over here drinking. You guys keep it up.
Well, I think that the way you're expanding is great because you're still heavily involved with the GCA, and that in terms of community and exposure for students, in terms of different directions they can follow. One of the things I really hope to do here is just continue to expand the community so that as people come up and they develop the skills and then they move, they mature into their own thing. They're still in the community in a way that shows younger students, this is a skill development place. We're not going to necessarily feed you all of the aesthetics that you'll apply later. We're going to try and expose you widely, but look at all the different possibilities once you leave. And I think you're giving a great example of that in a way that's entirely unique. Both of you. I mean, it's got to be amazing to have you guys there as a young student to see like, God, if I wanted to, I can kind of go Colleen's direction. I love what Will St. John is doing. I love what Jacob's doing. I love, Scott Waddell. I really resonate with him more.
Or Travis, or
yeah, Travis. He's so good. Yeah,
it's kind of annoying.
It's amazing. I think that's one of the things I'm sort of jealous of in terms of where I've been able to take my school versus what's going on there. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, but the level of students they attract is pretty amazing, and the people that have come out of that and continued to stay close. It's one of the things that I think, and I know this is public and anyone can watch this, but I'll say it anyway. It's one of the things I kind of missed in Florence. I think there was a group, I have friends from there that I'll have forever. I mean, I love Jordan Sokol. I love Steve Bauman. I love, Tim McGuire and so many other, Andy Amaral. And I learned so much from them as fellow students, but it didn't have as familial a feel, I think. There wasn't quite as much just close, from the top down love. I think it was maybe a little bit more competitive, a little bit more cold. And I actually think you, Katie, had more of an influence, and I'm saying this from the outside, but knowing how strong your personality is and how just how infectious it is, I think the GCA owes its familial, loving environment to you more than any other student it probably had.
Well, that's really very sweet of you, but I will correct you and say that it's actually Jacob. It's really Jacob.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, he is, for all the totality that he is, which is, what's your quote, Brendan? A unique prototype, not made for mass. What is
Oh,
it?
okay. It's a quote from Fear and Loathing, that he's one of God's prototypes, never considered for mass production.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a perfect description of Jacob Collins, who I love dearly, of course. But yeah, he's a truly wonderful, um, he's a truly wonderful guy, and he really treats GCA like his family, and he always has. And yeah, he really cares. He cares about the school a lot, and he kind of creates that sense of, I don't know, it's hard. It's really hard to describe if you, I don't know, Brendan, maybe you can do a better job than I'm doing, but yeah, there's a lot of camaraderie and a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
It's
So,
yeah. I'd always been kind of jealous of that when I visited. And I think that one of the benefits of Jacob, again, looking from the outside, is how he's allowed and almost demanded that the school expand beyond him. He's embraced that. He's embraced different personalities. He's embraced different talents and ways of going about it. And with who he was, I mean, who he is, he's kind of the godfather of the academic resurgence in America. And you know, uh, I'm always amazed at how humble the greatest painters are, and
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest success of the GCA is that Jacob has the humility and the foresight to embrace everything that he isn't, and allow it to just kind of have its own life, even though he's kind of at the helm. He's let it really flourish. And that's one of the most admirable things I can think of about what he's done with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my take on the school a little bit, or what if we're sort of wondering what the positive qualities of it are, is that so in art, the word like concept is thrown out a lot, the
Yeah,
conceptual aspect of artwork. But what's great about GCA is Jake and the other teachers would go in, and what they really cared about was teaching the concepts, teaching how to think about form, how to think about light, how to think about anatomy, how to think about form, how to think about structure. Those basic, and they're very difficult to do well. And then you'd ask him a question on materials. He's like, I don't care. I don't know. Use whatever paper you want. I was like, what are good paints? He's like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's irrelevant. You're wasting your time worrying about that. Every ounce of your energy goes into thinking about turning form around an accurately described deltoid and making sure it wraps in the proper way, and that you're going from chromatic wrapping around to an accurately rendered shadow shape. That's the meat on the bone, literally.
yeah,
And so that's where the principal was. And he's got a very he's got like a muscle car of a mind, and so he's attracted a lot of people because you can just keep learning from him. And I remember early on, he could do sort of an entire sort of psychological profile on you, just kind of from looking at your mark making and how you were going about things. So that was always, kind of impressive and interesting. And then the students would be so hardworking and so dedicated that you would end up, at an easel next to someone else who's just so driven and so talented. And then it's a rising tide kind of works from there a little bit.
yeah,
And then, you were talking about people getting a little bit stuck in a certain aesthetic of, really academically well-turned surfaces, and really, people, first-year students can get stuck, myself included, absolutely, in very perfect gradation. And, it's a difficult balance. What you want to do early on is you want to teach them how to be very careful, and very thoughtful and very controlled in their approach. And then that can stick, and then you can become obsessive about things, and that's hard. But And then, you know, students get so dedicated to wrapping their minds around these very, very difficult concepts that they get addicted to it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's why you see this sort of very similar looking work that continues after they graduate. And that's where some people's hearts are, and that's great. But then it takes another, you know, 5 or 10 years to even think about what you want to say after that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you know, you got to view art careers as, or you sort of, I think that there's a mistake in viewing it as you need a voice right out of school. Or even if, you know, you look at other schools and they're like, you need a voice now. What's your voice? That's all that matters. So I take the longer approach of, you know, it takes 4 years to learn these fundamental concepts. And then it takes another 4 to 6 years to learn what you want to say with those concepts in mind.
Yeah.
And then you're already halfway, you know, into your career. And that's when you really start sort of, you know, hitting on all cylinders. But for everyone, it's a little bit different. But yeah, Katie and I have both certainly loved Grand Central Academy or Atelier, whichever one you want to call it, in the community. It's been good to us, but yeah, every one of us negotiates our relationship both with the aesthetic and with the sort of culture in the school.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of like a lot of my study in the 19th century. The expectation was different. I think you come into art when you're in high school. If you draw on your notebook, you're the artist, right? And you just kind of pegged as you're already that, right? So when you get to college, you go to class and you're already an artist. So now they just have you start creating, and it's very it's frustrating because you want to be it. They start to talk to you about production right from the get-go, and so that kind of becomes your expectation without any of the tools to actually produce something worthwhile. You know, so I think if we could change expectation with young students, you know, if I was a junior in high school and I went to a guidance counselor and said I want to be a doctor, I already know without any, you know, guidance counselor advice that that's 4 years of undergraduate and another 4 years of postgraduate, and then I've got my, you know, medical school on top of that, and I've got residency on top of that, and my expectation going in is this is a long-term investment, and artists don't have that. In fact, quite the opposite. But when you come in and everything is about skill, 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 of course it's that, and of course it should be, and exactly what you're saying, Brendan. You're not talking about the maturation of artistic voice or artistic vision. You're talking about the maturation of artistic skill, which has to kind of come first. And it does take another 5-10 years to really start to understand, you know, how do I want to explain something? I might have ideas, but how I visually depict that is something I have to come to terms with. So in the 19th century, the expectation, I think, was 6 years if you were going to study at the Beaux-Arts. And then everything was aimed towards competing for the Prix de Rome, and the prize for the Prix de Rome was 5 more years of study. So if I'm coming in,
they waited forever. They were studying forever.
Yeah, I'm hoping for 11 years of study, right?
Yeah.
And so that 11 years is included. You have 5 years in Rome where you're really, now you've got the skills, and now you're really studying the masters. You're further adopting yourself into the whole world of art, and when you come out, you tend to be this far more mature, formed professional that is unique.
And would we really poo-poo a Jacques-Louis David? Like if some young kid showed up and he went to one of the ateliers and he's phenomenal, would you start telling him you need to go find your voice right now? I mean, that'd be crazy. You'd let him rip tear and go create more, you know, academic works moving. Like, I mean, we wouldn't, you know, it's just crazy to me to tell every student that they need to go immediately find their voice, or they, you know. I don't know.
It's a pressure. It's a pressure that is it's impossible to live up to anyway. And I find here in Utah, there is there's a negative context when talking about academic study, I've just by default, I think, become kind of the poster boy of academic study, which means, unfortunately, in some circles, I'm an elitist asshole who doesn't accept anything else. Katie, yeah, you are. Yeah, I mean, that's accurate. But it's, I think the perception of academic study, or people who have studied academically, is that they're robotic, that they don't have their own voice, that they're mere copyists, that we're closed-minded about different elements of art, different styles in art. Certainly, like the use of photography or Photoshop or any tools are naughty and out of bounds, and so and then we have these super high standards, so everything becomes this elitist insanity. And I find that I'll have conversations with people and they're surprised that I like this art, or that I use photos, or that I'm trying to learn Photoshop better to be a better composer, or whatever. They're surprised at my openness, and maybe even surprised that I'm not terrible to talk to, that I'm not as huge of an asshole as I'm painted out to be. But I think that's a sad misconception, because it does lead people who otherwise might look into it, who otherwise might really benefit from this kind of study. It leads them away from it, or it kind of puts a wall up where if you walk into the studio and you see the academic nudes, I'm sure it's the same at the GCA, they're kind of ubiquitous. They're kind of interchangeable. I'm not sure which student did that, but can't we rejoice in the fact that every student around the model got it right? Can't we rejoice in the fact that if we're all drawing the same thing and it looks like that thing, and the form turns and it feels weighty and the rhythm is beautiful and the proportions are correct and the portrait is right, there's something glorious about that. And you have to look at it in the context that it is. This is a student work. This is somebody who's studying. This is, if you go into a math class and everyone's solving the problem based on a certain formula, the formula is going to look the same. Yeah. And you're not asking them to come up with some new mathematical equation that's going to affect a global economy at the moment. You're just trying to teach them the basic skills so that they can maybe eventually come up with something.
Go there, yeah, sure.
And you have to kind of allow for that. So exactly what you're saying is the student work is inevitably going to be somewhat similar when you're going through the skill development, and then you do have to make that allowance post-graduation for the development of personal voice and understanding of how I want to describe something.
Yeah.
And I don't think that allowance is made for as much in the art world. The criticisms come hard and fast if things look too similar.
Yeah. It even I've noticed an increase criticism, or maybe I'm just more aware of it. Maybe it's always been strong in the ateliers, but recently it seems, at least in my little circle, to be increasingly criticism of GCA and ateliers in general, is that we aren't doing enough to encourage self-expression or your voice, or whatever you want to call it. And it's just really confusing to me, because I don't, and this could just be me being ignorant as well, but it seems very dubious to me that anybody else could teach me how to make the work that I want to make. I mean, they might be able to teach me how to talk about it better, but yeah, I find that a little concerning, that it makes me nervous. I just don't want artists to think that they don't have the ability to find that themselves.
Yeah.
We need help with a lot of things in our trajectory of learning. But I do feel like when it comes to the work that you are supposed to make as an individual, like you have all those answers. You don't need a graduate degree or an atelier or anything else to tell you, you know, yeah, you should paint this painting.
Right. Yeah.
But you might need some help with, you know, turning form.
Well, so I started, we a couple years ago, I canceled classes one day a week. And for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to encourage students to work more on their own. I wanted them to be, so whenever a student comes here and, you know, says, I want to study here or whatever, in that initial sort of interview, I talk about, you want to come here because you know what you're going to get. You're coming here because you really want to develop your skills. You want to be great at this thing. But I want you to feel from the very first day, like, this is in the way. This is not what I want to be doing. I want to be doing the thing that comes after that. But this is the door through which I'll get there a little bit more economically. But this isn't the thing that I want to be doing. And so in order to, when you're working on an academic nude, to have focus on why you're working on the academic nude, why am I learning to turn form? Why am I trying to get better at seeing things accurately? You have to be working at home on something that you're trying to solve those problems so that the problem solving you do in the school has an outlet, has a post school focus. And so, you know, we do have a composition class one day a week where we encourage people, whatever you're working on at home, let's help you solve those problems from a more professional painter consideration, right? Even from the very beginning. And if they don't have ideas, if they're coming in, they're super raw, you know, we just give them some like master copy or something to start generating ideas. But I think one thing that we could do is just encourage exposure to great art, exposure to great master works. Try and figure out what it is that you respond to consistently. Who are the painters? What are the subject matters? What is the type of handling, the way people are describing things that you respond to, so that it's not when you graduate, you're not starting over with that. You're not like, you haven't considered it ever, right? I want you to start developing your personal vision by thinking about it, at least. If all you think about is the academic, if all you think about is the skill development, it's not like you don't have to at some point go through that aesthetic development. You're going to have to start it at some point, but why put it off? That's kind of why I paused classes one day a week, so that they'd have an opportunity to give that more thought from day one. So they're not that far behind. They haven't put it off for the 4 years they're studying, and then all of a sudden they're done, and okay, I guess now I'll start thinking about it. They've been thinking about it all along. We've been having that conversation all along.
Great. Yeah.
And so I don't feed them ideas. I just say, just pick an idea, let's make that painting. And we'll go through all the stages we need to go through to problem solve. If you need to do thumbnails, if you need to get models, if you need to talk about costuming, if you need to talk about the setting or how you would light it, or if you're going to work from photography, how do you use a camera, on and on and on. We're talking about that. And I think the hardest thing about making that a successful class is that students don't work outside of class. It's insane to me, because when I got home, I would continue to paint. I think I made 72 paintings outside of class, outside of school, my first 6 months back at the Florence Academy, just because I wanted to paint. And these weren't paintings. These were, you know, plein air sketches and invented landscapes and whatever, because what I really love is painting. And I'm always shocked that the majority of students aren't necessarily like that. It's hard for them to go home and keep doing it. Then when they're in school on point. They're locked in. They're
Yeah.
they're super dedicated, but it's hard to get them to do the thing that they are studying to do. Have you guys
Yeah.
found that?
That's probably a little bit of a red flag. If because I was the same way. I mean, I definitely didn't make 72 paintings in my first year of school, but I came home and my first year at GCA, I was living in like generic student housing in New York. I was living in a dorm room and I had a loft bed, and I would set up still lifes on my loft bed and paint when I got home from GCA, and all the other kids in the dorm were just so confused that I had longer hours, school hours than anybody else, and then I would come home and keep painting, and they were like, "Don't you want to hang out? Like go out, like we live in New York." And I was like, I have work to do.
I like this. And it's not even work. You're just like, this is what I want to do. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm like, I
doing
don't
what I
want to
wanna
go out. Like, where are you gonna go?
These three mandarins are not going to paint themselves.
Yeah,
Oh,
but you are
God.
unique. You're not. Have you noticed that you're unique? Have you noticed? Just as because you've been there for so long, you've seen
No,
hundreds of students at this point, and is it
I
the
mean,
norm that people are that outside motivated?
the cool thing about now, like, so GCA, when Brennan and I were students, was in a different location, and we were like tenants in this building that closed at night.
Yeah.
Where now you go into GCA, at 6 a.m. or at midnight, and there's somebody there working. Like
Yeah.
the students are there working all the time on their projects, and they can stay at school and do it, which is really cool. But yeah, there are some students that don't, and those are usually the students that come in and do the thing, and they're good and they learn skills, and then maybe they paint, but they don't, maybe it's just not the thing for them, and which is totally fine. And I remember Jacob in his interview process is really intense, and he'll basically trying to just like say anything he can to try to convince you not to come, because he thinks that's like the best way to weed out the people that don't actually want to be there.
I think it's
I
a
mean,
genius reverse psychology move.
yeah, so but he's also really honest. Like I remember him saying, like, this is going to take you 10 years, and it's not going to be fun, and you're not going to be successful, and like all these different things. And I was like, awesome. When can I come?
Bring it on.
So yeah. And I think Brendan, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot and Brendan's not talking very much, but you had a similar, I mean, Brendan, God, like Brendan would get to GCA before any other person, and he would be there with all of his pencil sharpened and his whole palette laid out and everything perfect. So when the model got up on the stand, Brendan was just like painting, and the rest of us were like drinking our coffee and like setting up our stuff, and Brendan was always there first, right on time, ready to go. And then, I mean, yeah, ever since I'd known him, he took night classes constantly and was there all the time. So
I had a little bit of an unusual route in. I didn't paint. I'd never painted at all. So I was an art history major in college, and I loved it so much. But I thought I was going to go into, I don't know, something very New York, like law or finance or something. And my parents were encouraging me to give it a go at art if I wanted to. So after I graduated from college, I found Andrea Smith, who was actually she went to Florence Academy, and then she taught at Florence Academy for a little while, and then she started her own school up in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents actually had, their contact was Judy Kudlow, who was running the school. So I studied there a little bit.
Is that the Judy Kudlow? Did she? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm thinking Judy Cutler, who wrote the books on Maxfield Parrish. This is, sorry, somebody.
No, this is different, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, Judy Kudlow, she paints sort of, she paints a little bit of everything, but she's known for like still life paintings of hanging shirts and ties and things like that. So anyway, I studied with Andrea part-time. I did the Florence Academy drawing program with her up in Harlem. And then I found, but the school was sort of not as robust as I was hoping. She was thinking about moving back to Australia, things like that. So anyway, I found GCA, but when I went, I was 2 years into GCA and I'd literally not ever basically touched a paintbrush.
Yeah.
So again, you know, you brought up the slight issue, and it is an issue. I didn't mean to sort of skirt around it. It is an issue when a lot of students graduate. They're like, what am I supposed to do? I got really good at academic painting. What do I do? And I had that moment because I had never painted before I finished the drawing program, and I didn't even know that you could put mineral spirits in your oil paints to thin them out. Like, I didn't know that. I learned that in my third year. So there, and not knowing that is a serious detriment because you just don't develop the fluidity of the language of oil painting. That takes years. That's its own thing, and you can't be taught that.
Material usage, it's just just you can
like
talk
playing
about
a piano.
it. You need the experience.
There's no other way around it to know I put this much mineral spirits or medium in my brush. I spread it in these colors and I apply it like this and I get the desired effect. I mean, that just takes years of experience to do in a way that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I had what you're talking about is a little bit more of a tight, rigid experience going through the academic tradition because I went into it not knowing anything and I came out of it a very wound up sort of serious academic artist. And I still have that in me. I have a lot of trouble with like being comfortable with loose edges, you know, with painterly effects. It's not quite in my repertoire. And that's probably because I just never had that early comfort with it where you didn't have that sort of gnawing academic thought over your right shoulder. You know, for better or for worse is yet to be seen. I don't know, but yeah, that's complicated for every painter, you know, where on the spectrum they want to be.
Do you think that, because I find this now, there is a different mentality when you're talking about being a professional and being a student. A student, I feel like there's two benefits to it. Being a student for me was the most magical time of my life because I had no concerns other than getting better. And you know, when I was able, I kind of broke up my experience into two sections. I had Florence in 2003, and then I ran out of money, had to come home for 3.5 years, and then I was able to go back and finish. And so I think that when you're a student, you put yourself up to this method. You kind of find that humility that says, I'm gonna try to really understand how you want me to do this and be in that really uncomfortable place of learning, right? It's that discomfort where you know you're really pushing for something new. But there's also the second aspect to being a student, which is amazing, which is you feel like you can experiment because this is the time, right? And when you switch mentalities and you start thinking, okay, now I'm a professional, now I'm thinking about, and maybe I'm different because I have 5 kids and when I'm standing in front of the easel, I feel like I got to be really responsible because I'm paying the bills and you know, I got to be on point all the time. I can't be wasting around with stuff. And, you know, a lot of times if I do a plein air painting or if I just sit down with a model and do a portrait, I feel like it's almost
you need results.
Too self-indulgent because like I'm so excited to learn and I love the experience of that, but I'm not making something that I'm going to show and sell. And so that with those pressures comes maybe a little less freedom, maybe, that I feel to be extremely experimental, to go outside of the bounds. Like I've never tried it this way. I've never allowed something to be this loose. I've never been this suggestive. Do you feel that now that you've kind of shed this mantle of student and taken on this new mantle of graduate, professional, whatever you want to call it, that you kind of go to like, I know this way of solving the problems will work, and so that's how I'll do it, versus maybe a little bit greater freedom of, fuck it, I'm just gonna, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm gonna try something I've never done. I'm just gonna scrub it out. I'm gonna sand it down. I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you struggle with that freedom of experimentation? Because I feel like I kind of do sometimes.
Was that aimed at Katie, or who goes first on this one?
Well, you first, because your stuff is a little bit more rendered. It's you've been doing some trompe l'oeil stuff. The flowers you painted, a lot of the portraits you're painting has a high degree of finish that is, I think, I mean, beautiful and amazing, and I love it, and I could look at it all day. But that high degree of finish is somewhat tied to
Sure.
GC.
Yeah, so I would say my response to that is, in some ways I am still stuck very much when it comes to, I would argue that when it comes to painting, I'm still very much in a Grand Central Atelier academic mentality. I would say that, and that's, I don't know, the urgency to get away from that is not that high. I would say that I've broken away from it much more when it comes to stone carving, but that's probably because none of stone carving had anything ever to do with GCA, right? So I'm being much more experimental in the materials I'm using. I just ordered a bunch more stone from this guy in Oklahoma who has stone from all over the world, but I ordered some, and I'm going to be using some. They'll come out sort of feeling very contemporary. I'm using, a Norwegian rose stone, so it has like pink and white and gray running through it, and I'm going to hoping to do a portrait in it. And I think maybe part of the reason why I'm so comfortable in branching out and thinking I could do anything is because I didn't have this sort of rigorous, maybe a little academic, whether he be angel or devil, I don't know, on my shoulder whispering, that's good or bad, Right. So yes, in some ways, the stone carving has a freedom and a liberty, whereas the painting has this long, I feel a personal long history in a relationship with the school I studied at and the artists I came from, because it also personally took me a long time to wrap my head around the ideas that disassociating myself from some of them or the mental habits is much more complicated.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting to dissect yourself in retrospect and dive into that decision making. Where did that come from, and why did I have this hang up for so many years, and why did I think this? And you shed certain things at certain times, and you look back and trying to understand and self-evaluate where did that come from, and how can I, certain things that you may look at as weaknesses. For me, part of my weakness, I feel like, is I like to explain everything, and I was too hard-edged, and my paintings in the past have felt somewhat fragmented as a result of just being, crazy about explaining every little thing, and then looking back and self-assessing and trying to figure out where that came from and how I can avoid certain things in the future. How can I feel more freedom in the future? How can I still feel responsible and experimental and at the same time, and be willing to fail in big ways, be willing to waste mountains of time which wouldn't actually be a waste of time. It would be extremely expanding. But when you're going through it and you look back and you have nothing to show for it, it feels like a waste of time. It's hard to quantify the ways in which you did expand or those experiences improved you. But I find myself being scared of those moments, and you know, but I'm also I'm more afraid of being static. At this point in my career, I'm more afraid of being static than I am of wasting time being experimental. But that took a long time for me to get to, you know. I worked on fear for a really long time. The fear of money. I felt like I had to be responsible. So I have to do these subjects. I have to work at this certain size. I have to, you know, and I think the maturity for me in part has been kind of shedding some of that fear and finding a little bit more freedom in terms of just, you know, doing whatever is more intuitive for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool. Well, Brendan, you got some beautiful trompe l'oeils behind you. You did those, obviously. What are you working on now?
I am working on a large-scale painting of Katie, sort of standing next to a huge magnolia tree.
Wow.
I started it last year, so it's kind of behind the computer. It's I don't know, it's like 8 feet by 4 feet, 5 feet. It's pretty big. So anyway, it's a big magnolia. Katie planted a magnolia tree near our studio years ago, and now it's bloomed into what is she called? She's called Maggie the Magnolia. So anyway,
it's not very original.
Each spring, Katie and I both paint this magnolia because it's irresistible. So I made a bunch
behind you.
I made a bunch of, oh yeah, here, if I tilt up. Yeah, they happen to be, this is so apropos. I made a bunch of studies over the years, and so I'm using those to put into a big painting of Katie, and she's sort of standing in this magnolia tree. I started it last year, and I'm just trying to finish it up now. I'd be a little nervous about sharing images before it's done, but that's what I'm working on now, and it's almost done. And then I've got this stone coming in, so I'm going to start stone carving again, hopefully in September.
That's awesome. Do you know by chance the sculptor Patrick Burke? He does wood carving.
Maybe it rings a bell.
I think he's in Wisconsin or Minnesota, one of those states. I think it's Wisconsin, but
portraits.
He does a lot of ornamentation for like massive mansions. But what is the most unbelievable is his figure sculptures. And it's wood carving. He does all wood carving, and he is, I think he's self-taught largely. He is just a monster talent, young guy, and super nice, really amazing guy. But if you look him up on Instagram or Facebook, I think you'd really
will do.
Yeah, Patrick Burke. Yeah, and Katie, you're just marinating a baby. you're watching and rewatching documentaries while marinating a baby.
No, gosh, I'm like, I was thinking about what I said, like after I said all that stuff about not painting, I was like, oh wow, what am I gonna sound like total lazy bum? I'm painting a little bit. I have a few pieces going to shows this month, so I actually am like, finishing up some things.
Yeah.
Not totally. I'm not painting as much. I guess that's me not painting is still probably like people would die to have as many hours painting of a week as I
yeah.
So, count your blessings. I'm counting mine, but yeah, it's I'm still working on some flower stuff. Nothing, it's not, I don't have anything like really exciting.
We've
you
got to
know,
go
groundbreaking
back to
things.
Paris together. I remember the last time we were there, Brian Johnston and I were walking through the Louvre. And I guess we knew you guys were going to be there, but we
Oh, we
didn't know when
bumped
you were
into
going to.
you.
We did not know you. Well, we knew that we were all in Paris, but we didn't all know we were at the Louvre that
Oh,
day.
no. I didn't even know if we'd all arrived yet. And we go up to the
We
wing
bumped into
all
you in
the
front of the
roads are.
crows.
And Brian and I are talking. I'm like, wait. Is that Katie Whipple? That can be no other voice but Katie Whipple's voice. And you can walk down. Sure enough, there you guys were. That was amazing.
My voice carries, unfortunately, for everyone.
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
Oh man.
Well,
Correct.
I think I'm getting back from a gallery, the painting Mont Saint Michel. And we had talked way back when I think
that was a
we
cool
were still in
painting.
Paris.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
amazing.
trading. I think I've tried it in enough places to know nobody else wants it. So if you guys still want it, maybe we could talk about a trade.
We
Sounds
love it. That
great.
was a beautiful painting. That was really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You did a couple. Didn't you do a couple of them?
well, I did a bunch of sketches when I was there, and then I made one
A couple
painting
studio
at
pieces.
home. Yeah, one studio piece. I'd like to do some more. It feels a little bit I don't know. It's such a unique and magical place that painting it feels like almost gimmicky for some reason.
Cliche.
But I was there and the experience, and so it feels sincere just because I experienced the place. But yeah, because it's such an iconic place, it feels slightly cliche to do more works from. But yeah, we'll have to talk about that because I'd love to. I have one of yours, Katie, the little apple painting.
Yeah.
Ago.
Oh, that was one of my after school still life paintings from when I was a student at GCA.
Yes, and I proudly own it and have it hanging in my studio.
Oh,
So I'd love to have another one of yours. I'd love to have one of your paintings, Brendan. So we'll have to talk about
Figure it
that.
out.
yeah. That's the best part about having friends that are really good painters is that, you can trade them for paintings.
Yeah, I had Michael Hall when he was in for the sculpture thing. He'd never been in my studio before, and he was looking around. I have this amazing sculpture by, I'll show you, it's right here, by Cody Swanson. Can you even see that?
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Oh, I know Cody.
It's of Eve, and somebody bought it. Fred Ross actually bought it, donated it to the Springville Museum, but they won't show it because it's too realistic for this community. So I have it on permanent loan from the museum, which I'm super happy about. But I have this really beautiful Travis Schlott. I've got Uribetic and Jeremy Lipking and I have a little Ted Manoff when he taught here. He did a portrait sketch. So I love it. I'm totally addicted to buying or trading for my friends' work. I feel lucky to have it in the studio. I point at it all the time for my students. They're great references for students to see as well. So yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Sounds good.
And I know you have mountains of work. So just sitting around is going nowhere now. So
I'm actually, if we're going to be completely honest, I have started negotiating with a couple of friends for paintings for the baby.
Yeah.
I was like, we're going to start his art collection soon. I got to get some new stuff for the nursery. So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, we're in the, there are a few negotiations in progress already.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I don't get to talk to you enough, so it's been an absolute pleasure to chat and catch up and share some ideas.
Well, we thanks for inviting us, and it is really fun just to chat. And man, I can't wait to all be together again in real life one day.
Yeah, for real. Well, I had to cancel a family trip. We were coming to New York, but all of that gets shut down. So hopefully this thing will get under control, and we'll have a happier environment November 4th. And I'm just going to throw that little political thing in there at the end.
Salty.
I'm gonna leave that there on the table.
I'll drop that right at the end. And I love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for taking the time.
We love you
Thanks so
too.
much.
Be well.
All right. I'll talk to you later. See you.
Bye.
Bye.